Welcome to Wicked Housewives on Cape Cod, Living the Dream, a show that celebrates ordinary people who do extraordinary things. Hear what motivated them to attain their goals, see which circumstances molded their character and turned them into everyday heroes. Learn more about this show and the hosts for Wicked Housewives on Cape Cod TV and radio on Facebook. Now here are your hosts, the Wicked Housewives on Cape Cod, Kathleen O'Keefe Canavas and Lori Boyle.
Welcome to Wicked Housewives on Cape Cod. Our show today is going to showcase a very special guest. But before we get started, my name is Kathleen O'Keefe Canavas. My friends call me Kat, so please call me Kat as well. And I'm one of the Wicked Housewives on Cape Cod. And at the other end of the table is Lori Boyle, our other Wicked Housewife on Cape Cod. And I'd like to invite you all to chat with us on our Facebook page. And we did get a message in from Darian Secret. I believe I said that correctly. I hope so. And he says, "Hi, Kathleen. You met me at Macy's. I'm the beauty advisor for Clarence, as well as the makeup artist. It was a pleasure meeting you." So we're running into many people who have already friended us on Facebook. So if you see us walking about town, stop and tell us what you think of the show. We'd love to hear from you.
I'd like to introduce our first guest. Teresa Velardi is an author, speaker, potter, and transformational life coach. She will take you on your personal transformation journey using pottery as an illustration for your own transformation from a ball of clay to a work of art. Along the way, you'll learn how to unleash your power while connecting with your creative gifts and talents to live your most authentic life. Thank you, Teresa. Thanks for being here.
I'm excited to be here.
Good.
I'm excited to be here.
So, Teresa, the name of this show today is From Abuse to Abundance, and you actually helped us choose that name for this show. And what makes this show so special today is Teresa is going to be describing how she went from an abused housewife to an abundant single mother. So, Teresa, tell us about your life then with the abuse. Let's start there.
Okay. Well, I knew my husband for a long time before I married him. And along the way, there were lots of signs, that little red flags that came up, the way that he treated me. Emotionally, there was no spiritual component in our relationship. And that eventually led to physical abuse. You know, when I got married to this man, I knew from the beginning that I was making a mistake. As I stood at the altar and the priest asked me if I was going to say yes to this man, I stopped and I looked around at everybody who was there, and I was taken aback by the number of people that were there. And then I saw his mother, who had worked really hard to be all, you know, dressed up, and even her shoes and her bag matched. She drove me crazy, but we got that done. And then I looked at my father, who had doubled up on his dentist appointments, and he was
To do what?
so that he could have beautiful pictures next to me, which was, it was just such of the three daughters, I was the only one who got married in church, so I was the only one who got to walk down the aisle. So this feeling of not being in the right place was kind of overcast by the fact that everybody had come out for this big wedding. And my mother, I looked at my mother, and she knew that I was in a place of not being sure whether I was going to say yes to this man. And in my soul and in the center of my being, I heard God say to me, "Teresa, don't do this." And so then the priest asked me again, "Teresa, do you take this man to be your husband?" And I looked at him, and one of the things that I had asked him was to not be drunk and not be high when we took our vows, because he had a drinking problem and he had a problem with drugs. Here I am looking at him, seeing that glazed over look, and my mother knew. She knew. Moms are like that. They know. I can laugh about it now because I've come through it, but because of the fact that I was going to ruin it for everybody else, if I said no, I went ahead and said yes. I completely abandoned myself in that moment, and I said yes. And you know, having been brought up in a household where God was this vengeful God. I was like, God's going to punish you. Like when I was a kid and I was fighting with my grandmother and went outside and fell on the step, and there's my father standing over me saying, see, God punished you for talking back to your grandmother, So what happened in the years to come, I thought, was punishment for not listening to that still small voice within me that I call God today. So it was an interesting time in my life, and I'm so grateful that it's over and that I've moved into a very different place. And there were a lot of things that happened along the way.
Yeah. So Lori, we have that intuition, but I think something that we were talking about this last night before we've ever shared this with you is Lori was talking about the peer pressure and having your whole family in there, and how are you going to say, excuse me, I changed my mind, and pick up your train and leave?
Exactly. I mean, when all the guests have come in, the invitations have gone out, everybody's excited about the wedding, everyone's done something special to prepare, bought the gift, all that. There's tremendous pressure to go through with it at that point.
There was.
So, yeah, I can understand that, absolutely.
Yeah, and I'm sure that a lot of other women have done the same thing. I'm sure that they have, but I'm here to tell you that if you get that feeling, you have to live with yourself in the end.
Right.
There were a lot of things along the way. One of the worst things that happened to me was the man that I was married to was alcoholic and drug addicted. And as in a lot of people who are alcoholic and drug addicted, they go into what's called blackouts. And although along the way I had started to go to Al-Anon meetings, which is 12 steps for friends and family of alcoholics, and I highly recommend it. It changed my life. And the people who were part of that organization helped me along, from their own experience. They share their experience, strength, and hope with other people in order to be able to live a better life. And there came a point where I'm sure he was in a blackout because there was a conversation that followed this event. He never recalled any of it. That's the night that he put a knife through my throat and threatened my life. So he had come home, and I was in the bedroom. I remember him pushing me up against the wall, and he had, it was actually a switchblade, and for whatever reason he had it on him. And I had come to a place where I was afraid of this man for a lot of different reasons, and he held that knife against my throat, and he told me he was going to kill me. And I had to think fast, and I had to talk my way out of it. And I begged for my life for the sake of my son. I said to him, if you do this, I'm going to be dead and you're going to be in jail, and who's going to take care of our son? So in that moment, he stopped. I don't know that if I hadn't said that, he would have stopped. I don't know that, and I might not be here to tell the story. And there are a lot of women who have been in this situation that are not here to tell the story. So my hope for you is if you're listening to this and you've experienced a similar situation, there are ways for you to get out, because following that moment, he then decided that he was going to just finish off this wonderful night of entertainment by raping me. Again, it's gaining the control. He couldn't have the honor of killing me because I talked him out of it. So he had to regain his control some other way, and that was not a great experience. Let me tell you. And even though I was married, somebody would say, "Well, you were married to the man, And well, when someone forces himself on you, whether you're married to them or not, that's defined as rape. It was a horrible time in my life, but thank God I don't live there anymore. And the experiences down the line, and there are many of them, emotional abuse that I took in front of other people who were in my house. And eventually, after a while, nobody wanted to come to my house. And I was like really alone. I was very alone. Things did not really start to change for me until one day I got up and I was looking in the mirror. I was going to get ready for work, and I stopped and I really looked at myself. And in that moment, I said, "Who are you? Who are you, and why are you here?" And that was a two-sided question. It was like, why am I here on this planet, in this life? And the other thing is, why am I still in this relationship? Why am I in this spot that I was in that moment? And that's where things started to shift for me, right there.
That was your defining moment.
That was my defining moment. Exactly. Exactly.
Well, your life has changed quite a bit since then.
Yeah.
But it took a few more steps for you to get this man out of your life. Can you tell us how you did that? You had a plan.
Yes, I had to have a plan. So I realized that there was no turning back for me, that I wanted out of this relationship. And I was stuck in my vows, and I went and I talked to a Catholic priest. I was a practicing Catholic at the time. And he said to me, Teresa, get out of this marriage before he kills you. He'd come close once. Get out of this marriage before he kills you. So I started making plans, and with the help of some people who I had befriended in Al-Anon, I learned a lot of different things. There's bureaus out there for women who are in abusive relationships. There's a Victims Information Bureau. There's all kinds of resources out there. So it's different from state to state. It's different from county to county. So check in your county, go to the local courtroom and see if there are people who can help you. My next step was to go for an order of protection, because there had been a number of incidents that happened that I could prove that this man was abusing me. So I got an order of protection. Some people call it a PFA, which is protection from abuse, but I got an order of protection where I lived at the time. And it was hard for me to get it, and I had to get it not only for myself but for my son. Besides the fact that my husband was abusing alcohol, he was also abusing drugs. And you know, when somebody comes to the school, for example, and has alcohol on their breath, the school is not going to release the child to that man. But if he doesn't have alcohol on his breath and he's still high as a kite because he's taking some sort of pills, you know, it's very hard for someone to discern whether or not that person is in a state of mind where they can care for a child. So I was really concerned about my ex-husband going and getting my son from school, because I knew that as a way to take back his power, he was going to run with that child. I just knew it. When I went to court that day for the
Order of protection.
Order of protection, thank you.
We're listening.
I know, thank you. I appreciate that. When I went for the order of protection, there are law students who are there to help you, and they get practice being before the judge. So this young woman was helping me, and she asked me to explain everything, and I did. And she had said to me, so what are you going to ask the judge for? What do you want me to ask the judge for? She was going to speak on my behalf as though she were my attorney. And I said, well, I want him out of the house. I want him not to be able to be, and you know, of course, abuse me and whatnot. And I want him to be not able to take my son from school. She said to me, well, the judge is not going to agree to that. That's his child as well. And I thought to myself, this is what I need. You asked me what I wanted, this is what I want, and this is what I need. And so when we went up before the judge, she got the first part right, and then she was quiet. And the judge looked at me, and I said, Your Honor, if I may address the court. And I asked him, I said, exactly what I just told you. No, it's not easy for someone to discern whether or not this man is under the influence of something. And so the judge said, you know something, that makes perfect sense to me, and I'm going to allow that. So in the order of protection, it had everything that I wanted, including that my husband was not going to be able to pick up my son because I knew what was coming next. Before I went to the courtroom, I had enlisted the help of a friend who kept me safe. I had left my home, I took my son with me, and I was under the roof of her house. My car was hidden in their garage. They had to clean out the garage to put my car in there. And that's how, you know, and so these are people who I called friend, and who would really do anything to help me, because they knew, and they could see more than I could. They were more afraid for me than I was, because I was in it and my focus was on my child. Don't you know, the very next day he went to the school and tried to get him.
Your husband went to the school
and tried to take my son, and thankfully the afternoon before I had brought the papers. They gave me papers for the school. I had a conversation with the principal had a conversation with the teacher. So when he showed up and they told him no at the front desk, he actually went around the side of the building knowing where the classroom was, and he knocked on the window, and then he went to the door. He was trying to get my son to come to the door. And meanwhile, the teacher in the classroom called the principal's office, and the principal came to the door and read him the riot act about, you know, coming to the school to try and literally abduct my child.
Talk to the principal, talk to the teachers, let them help you.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah, I absolutely believe that. And another thing you brought up, Kat, was the being ashamed part.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's something actually when you kind of think it out, why should the abused person be ashamed? It's the person who's abusing them. Someone who would abuse his own wife, someone who would abuse his own child, hurt his own child. He should be ashamed, not you. And I think the world kind of has to change their thinking about that.
I think you're absolutely right. And in the moment, it's a very shameful moment. Like, look what has happened to me. Look where I am. Look where this has brought me. And it's very shameful.
Yeah.
I think it's just something that we have to talk about, and we have to turn it around, because you're not the one who has been abusing someone.
Somehow that mindset is just not part of that in the moment.
In the
moment, they're not. This is the way of getting control. There is no shame in it for them. I was not living my life true to myself. It was a good show. It was a really good show, but really inside I was dying.
So Teresa, what would you say to women right now who are finding themselves in the same position that you were in? What would you say to them?
Tell someone. Tell someone, because the worst place for me to be during that time was inside my own head. You know, because it was I kept replaying it and replaying it. Oh, and another thing that really helped me through that time was to journal about it. Like really start putting how you feel down on paper. It's a way of getting it out of yourself and out of your head onto the paper. There's something very healing about writing. That's why I do what I do with Wake Up Women and getting the stories out there for people. There's healing that comes from telling your story on paper. We were meant to be courageous, and there is a song about that too. And we are not meant to live lives under the submission of somebody else. So the first thing is to be courageous and focus on you. I spent so much time focusing on him, I had lost myself completely. So really what I would welcome conversation and comments from anyone watching this.
Yeah, and I would encourage everyone to go to Teresa's website and see her beautiful pottery, and look into the Wake Up Women book series, and some of her stories are in there, as well as other compelling stories of other women. Kat Canavas and I really admire Teresa for having the courage to get her and her son to safety. We also admire her for coming on the show and sharing her story with us. If you're in the same situation, please contact the Cape Cod Center for Women. Their website is capecodshelter.org, and their hotline is 508-564-SAFE. Thanks for watching.
Thank you for joining Lori Boyle and Kathleen Kat O'Keefe Canavas on Wicked Housewives on Cape Cod. Don't forget to like us on Facebook for our show updates, and join us next time when we showcase more everyday heroes.